Good day to all of you. I am AC and I welcome you to the second lecture in this video series where we will be discussing the topic of rhetoric and the specific figures of speech which has been included in your syllabus. As we have already discussed, in the classical societies of Greece and Rome, oratory, which is the skill of effective and persuasive speech, was a highly valued quality. The art and science of such persuasive speech came to be known as rhetoric. With the passage of time, rhetoric became prevalent in different areas of human life and knowledge. Christian missionaries used rhetoric to spread their teachings. The historically important periods of Renaissance and Reformation also saw an increase in the use of rhetoric. In the centuries following Renaissance in Europe, rhetoric became a significant part of not only the literary forms of poetry, drama, etc., but also of scientific treatises or philosophical writings. And this importance of rhetoric as a literary discipline, apart from its religious and political usage, has turned even more important now. With the increase of public education and mass communication, the art of rhetoric has become a part of our everyday speech and expression. M.H. Abrams has quoted Aristotle, who in his book called Rhetoric describes rhetorical discourse as the art of discovering all the available means of persuasion in any given case. An orator was supposed to use rhetoric appropriately to gain intellectual and emotional effects on the audience, so that the listeners could be propelled to think or act in a particular way. In other words, the goal of rhetoric was to persuade people to follow someone or some thought, or create a guideline for delivering speeches on important occasions. There are many areas or divisions of the art of rhetoric. However, we are not going to learn about the art of rhetoric in its entirety. Our interest, following the syllabus, will be limited to a stylistic element of the art of rhetoric, which is figurative language. Proper use of rhetoric demands that the use of language should be different from the day-to-day mundane manner of speech. Use of figurative language is vastly different from what, as readers or speakers of English language, we would generally consider as the standard meaning of a word or the proper arrangement of words in a sentence. In other words, figurative language is the use of words in a way that differs from ordinary standard speech, both in regards to their meaning and their placement. Abrams notes that from the Roman times, figurative language has often been divided into two categories. These categories are figures of thought or tropes and figures of speech or schemes. The term trope is derived from the Greek word for turn, as it refers to turning or altering the meanings of words. Tropes are the usage of words or phrases in a way that transforms their standard meaning. So instead of their literal meanings, tropes call for creation of imaginative and figurative meanings. Schemes, derived from the Greek word for form, suggests an alteration to the form of a sentence or phrase. Schemes denote a change in the standard order or syntactical pattern of the words. However, in the current intellectual climate, many theorists do not accept the division between tropes and schemes. And in the books that we will study, you will notice that all the different devices of figurative speech will be included under the general term of figure of speech. Also, as Sarkar and Bhattacharya mention, now it is often considered unwise to form a binary division between literal and figurative language, as all use of language is in some way figurative. Still, figurative language differs from the plainer language that we use, as it is more impactful and can achieve greater effect on the listener. There are many different figures of speech which are used to embellish the language and to make it more striking. All these figures of speech are divided into a number of categories based on how they are formed or created. Let us take a brief glance into these different categories. The first category is that of figures based on analogy, agreement, or similarity, where an idea or thought is used in a figurative way by presenting similarity, analogy, agreement, or likeness between two different things or subjects. Both simile and metaphor fall under this category. The next category is that of figures based on association, where figurative usage is made on the basis of association, connection, or relationship between two different things or ideas. Metonymy, synecdoche, hyperlage, and allusion fall under this category. In the figures based on contrast or difference, rhetorical or figurative use of language is achieved by carefully using the contrast, difference, or opposition between two things or ideas. The devices that fall under this category are antithesis, epigram, oxymoron, climax, anticlimax and bathos, synlepsis or condensed sentence, and paradox. Then comes the figures based on imagination, where figurative use of language requires use of imagination through which words or phrases are used to present novel meanings and ideas. The following figures can be categorized as based on imagination. These are personification, prosopopoeia, personal metaphor, pathetic fallacy, apostrophe, invocation, vision, and hyperbole. Figures based on indirectness rely on presenting ideas or statements in an indirect or roundabout way to transcend the effects of general speech. The figures that are included in this category are innuendo, irony, sarcasm, periphrasis or circumlocution, euphemism, meiosis, and litotes. In the figures based on emotion, rhetorical effect is formed by making use of impassioned, exclamatory and expressive use of language. Interrogation or erotesis and exclamation fall under this category. In some books, these figures may be included under the following section. And the next section is that of figures based on construction, where emphatic use of language is achieved by altering the usual positioning and placement of the words in constructing phrases or sentences. The figures included in this category are hendiadys, chiasmus, ellipsis, zeugma, polysyndeton, asyndeton, hyperbaton or inversion, anaphora or epanaphora, and epistrophe or epiphora. Next comes the figures based on sound, where poetic effect and embellishment of language is gained by leveraging on and playing with the auditory character of words. Figures based on sound include alliteration, consonance, assonance, pun or paronomasia, and onomatopoeia. Now, there are many figures of speech that do not fall under the sections we have already discussed. These are tautology, pleonasm, prolepsis, paralepsis, catachresis, ornamental epithet, and aposiopesis. However, you will need to study only a limited number of figures of speech, as mentioned in your truncated syllabus. The figures of speech which are included in your syllabus are simile, metaphor, metonymy, synecdoche, epigram, personification, hyperbole, irony, alliteration, and chiasmus. So in the next lecture, we will start discussing the specific figures of speech that we have in our syllabus. And in the meantime, I also suggest you to try to obtain the books that I have recommended in the previous lecture, or at least one of them.